I'm Tom McMillan. Join me as I interview professional sports people on their journeys making it pro. I'm on a mission to explore the mental strength and dedication required to make it in professional sport. If you like what I'm doing, please remember to like, subscribe and leave a comment below. Hope you enjoy the episode. So, good morning, Ryan, and welcome to Marbella, as well as welcome to Making It Pro. I'm grateful for you giving us your time this morning, which is a privilege considering you're here on holiday. But how are you feeling being in the sun?
Yeah, no, it's been nice. It's a bit of a messy way of getting here with obviously everything that happened and stuff back home. But to be fair, like really thankful to the guy who sorted obviously everything out. So yeah, can't complain so far.
Good man. Got a bit of tan over the next few days.
Yeah, I hope so.
So what we'll do, Ryan, we'll go straight in with just some of the questions. And as I've explained, the basis is that we're trying to share this information so that future young players that will go through the journey that you've been through yourself will benefit from what's on offer, and hopefully they can build on their own careers from some of the knowledge and expertise that you've picked up along the way. So my first question is, what's your earliest football memory that you can recall?
God, wow. I wouldn't say it was necessarily my football memory, but obviously with my parents and stuff, and mainly my dad, he used to always say, like, when I was in a crib, I didn't want teddy bears, I didn't want any of that sort of stuff. It was more just used to have footballs. So from obviously a really young age, I think because he was involved in football quite a bit as well, it was probably one of those sort of embedded in my subconscious type thing. And then just growing up, weirdly enough, I was looking on social media the other day and there was like an old magazine called Match. And I remember it just twigged me because I remember when I used to go to the shop and buy that, and that's where I used to keep update with everything. So I think just from an early age, really young, just kind of really been into it. And then ultimately remember just going to my local school, because that's where we used to play our like weekend games for like grassroots and stuff. And I used to play up front, and there's some photos at my house of like my first ever game. I think I played like a team called Berg or something like that. Played up front. Obviously, I don't play anywhere near there now, but like just going back then, really. So it was, a lot of memories, but more probably now as being older, more captured from like moments and memories and conversations and photos, really more than anything. If you're talking about like my earliest sort of memories and stuff like that, to be fair,
that's a good point as well. Though I mean, I remember. Obviously, I'm a lot older than you, but as a kid myself, that you used to get like Match and you would get Shoot and Roy the Rovers and these different magazines that kids, I think, miss out on now because everyone's online. You used to wait every weekend for the release, it was a highlight of your weekend, and kids don't get that now. And so, as sort of from that age and getting into play at a club or play for a team, have you any recollections of what that felt like to be part of a team?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, like growing up, it was a sort of a bittersweet in like when I'm talking like young, like we're going like 7-a-side and things like that. It's probably quite bittersweet because obviously, as you can imagine, like football's a highly competitive sport. I wasn't a kid that I enjoyed and loved football, but I was a winner. Like I wanted to win, even from an early age. So the emotions that come with that, and weirdly enough, going back to like the memories thing, I remember once back in the day, like you had to take it in turns to go and goal. It was freezing. It's embarrassing, but I remember it was my turn to go and goal. I just cried my eyes out. I just wanted to go and goal. Ran off the pitch, literally ran into my dad's arms. I was like, I don't want to do it. And then I think because obviously I used to be like boys and girls played together at that age, so I think one of the girls went in. But in regards to like football and stuff, when I was younger, it was. I laugh about it now, but back then it was quite frustrating. There was me and another lad who were seen to be like the best in the team and things like that, but it was almost like I was the outcast and he was one that everyone loved. So he obviously got all of the love and the praise and stuff like that, whereas I would just kind of be doing it. And I think it made me hungrier to do well and more to prove what I'm worth. But at the same time, which to be fair, happened further down the line. But I think it was difficult because as much as I enjoyed it and I loved obviously playing, there was that element where you didn't still quite feel like a fit in type thing. But then obviously, because of obviously how successful I was really young, and I guess my dad being my dad and a protective parent, he wanted to take me out of that environment. And a good friend of his that he knew, his son was a year older. So I went and joined the year older team, which pushed me a lot more. And obviously even that, to be fair, was, I was doing really well. And we ended up building a quite highly successful team. Are you talking like young ages, 7-a-side and things like that, by me playing a year older. So for years in 7-a-side, I always played a year up. And then obviously you come to 11-a-side, and I couldn't because obviously they were doing it a year before I was, and I wasn't allowed. And that then meant obviously a new sort of chapter and a new sort of challenge, which obviously took over from there really.
It's an interesting point, which I think goes through all players' careers, even when they get to highest level. And I think people can forget that, you know, that feeling of feeling detached. You don't feel that you're necessarily fitting in.
Yeah.
Like I've shared with you, you know, obviously we're out here in Spain, and my own son's with you guys, but has played here in Spain. I've seen it in other non-Spanish kids where sometimes it can feel like they are outcasts. You know, they go by the name Geary, which is like an English gypsy, but it's to be fair to Spanish, it's like a term of endearment. But I think that's such a crucial thing, as you know, in your own career, that some players require an arm round the shoulder. Some of them can take a bit more of sterner talking. But I think for any kid in any sport to feel detached and not part of it, I think it's such a crucial thing in life, you know, to make somebody feel like they're involved and they're welcome and that they're connected, is how you get the best out of a person in any walk of life. And it frustrates me when I see kids being left out, or, you know, obviously they're big nowadays in bullying and things, but it's a crucial point.
I think like obviously we're going back sort of like what 2000s and early 2000s and stuff when I really was like that young. I think back then there weren't as much like a spotlight on that sort of stuff. I think obviously with, like you were saying earlier about, you know, they miss out, like the kids nowadays miss out of the match magazines and things like that. I think back then, because there wasn't that sort of platform, it was very rife in there in terms of the sort of exclusion and that sort of, I think it still happens now, but I think it's people are aware of it a lot more now, whereas before you just sort of a young kid and your dad's like, oh wait, I say you'd be like, oh, you know, I'm okay, I'm fine. But then almost like actually when you're playing, it was like your escape. And then obviously that then comes with its own frustrations as you sort of move on further down the line. So I think it definitely helps. I think it definitely, without you realizing it, as a kid, I never really felt like I was that bad. I didn't really bugger me that much. There was like the odd moment where you kind of step back and you were like, well, okay, like you start to question things. But I think I was always one of those where I was just like, whatever, like just crack on, and what like will end up happening will happen. And I think my dad was a big support network and stuff like that. You know, so I think it's definitely always been there. But I think what it does is, as I said earlier, like subconscious and things that you don't realize when you're younger, that really sort of cement a place in your being and who you are and what you become. I think those are the little challenges that you don't realize or you don't understand at the time. But as you get older, you start to have a bit more of a wider spectrum of understanding about it. So you start to go, actually, do you know what? It was this and it was that maybe actually helped gear me to where I am essentially today.
I mean, obviously now as a coach at Aldershot, you're dealing with the sort of elite age groups and the older age groups. Although the club, you know, experienced seeing it last weekend, the fantastic tournament over 2 days, where they had a lot of age groups and girls' age groups from the youngest right through to sort of 16s. But you're dealing with the upper levels, will be pushing for the first team. But do you find as a result of that, Ryan, that you've become more aware now as a coach, as well as, I know obviously you're still playing at a high level, but are you conscious of that when you see young players drifting out of maybe the main body of group of players? Are you aware of making sure kids are feeling included in the earlier age groups?
I think it's something that's easy to sort of like succumb to, just losing sight of it, because you're just so ingrained in the day that sometimes, unless you actually take yourself out, like almost like that out of body experience type thing, where you take yourself out and you step back and you actually just observe, I think sometimes you can get lost in it. So I think it is really important to observe, and that's something I kind of picked up over the year. But I would obviously say, like, all the way through, it's about making sure that whoever we come across, it's not just about improving them as a footballer and you know, the knowledge of the game, their ability, their understanding. It's ultimately about improving them as a person. Because by improving them as a person, by gaining their buy-in, what you're going to gain, hopefully, from that is you're going to make them better. That's a byproduct of us training every day and knowledge being passed on. You're going to make someone better. And you know, just for contact time, you're going to make people better as a player and their understanding. So I think that gets you so far. But I think if you look at like the elite and the top and the players that I've come across in my career and the players that are at the top of the game now, it's not ability that separates them. There's players, we speaking about one earlier. There's players that have got so much ability that fall short of some people, and I think it's the characteristical traits that are instilled in someone that really makes that difference. So I think for me, one of the things I want to make sure I do is I want to be better than what I've come across. And that's not to say everyone that I've come across has been a bad influence or a detriment to myself and my career and things like that. But it's to say, like anything, you're going to come across good people, you're going to come across bad people. I want to be remembered as one of the good people and someone I'm honest and I'm straight, because that's the best thing for them. Yeah. Although, in that moment, it's difficult to hear, like anything. But it's one of those where hate me for a minute, respect me for a lifetime, rather than love me for 10 minutes and hate me for a lifetime, because so I want to try and be better than some of the experiences that I've had, and hopefully that goes a long way. And it comes with its challenges, it comes with clashing at times with people, and I think then it's about, we went too early, it's about understanding the person and the individual. As one lad, obviously I do at the moment, like, it's a love-hate relationship, we clash all the time, but I've had him for 2 years, but I know when I can have that conversation with him, and when actually, I need to leave it, and we'll revisit this in a day or two. And I think it's that man management which is probably really vital, because then when you're trying to get them to implement your style, or you're trying to get them to buy into what you want to do, it's only going to enhance that.
Absolutely. No, I think I agree with that. I think for any young player and any young person in any walk of life, that if you can't see the journey that's being proposed, then it's very difficult to jump on the bus, and I heard Grealish talking at the weekend, obviously, with the influence that Pep Guardiola has had on his life and on him as a player, and obviously in the time he's been there, and he's encouraged him and developed him into the squad. Because I think regardless, the pressures, the reasons for the pressures change when somebody pays £100 million for you and a club pays that. But I think within the players' instincts, that insecurity and still trying to fit in must still exist at the lowest or highest level.
Yeah, I mean, regardless of what money you're on, regardless of how much you've been brought for, whether the pressures are still the same. Yeah, I think obviously people might think that's crazy, because but the pressure, because for example, someone like Grealish is in the spotlight 24/7. So then you look at it and go, it's the nation's pressure, and it depends on what he is like as a person as to whether that pressure is something that is big, or actually, I don't really care type of thing. But I think regardless of where you're at, the pressure is always there, and I think it's about almost like learning to find a way to enjoy that pressure, and say, do you know what, I'm actually privileged. So almost flipping it on its head and saying, do you know what, instead of being I'm really worried and I'm nervous about this could go wrong, and say, look, I say it to the boys all the time, and it's really blunt, but I say, look, win or lose, win the cup, lose the cup, win the league, lose the league, get a pro, don't get a pro. You will go home, you will sleep, you'll wake up tomorrow, and you'll be alive. And I think in the grand scheme of things, that's so much more precious. And I think actually, do you know what, people then turn around and go, actually, do you know what? My life isn't going to end when this happens. I remember being a first year scholar, and we're talking first 5 weeks of the season, I'd have a bad game, and I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to get a pro. My career's over. Because you build it as kids, we build everything up in the here and the now, and it's only when you get past that you realise maybe we should have done this differently, because actually that year would have been better, so on and so on. And I think no matter what pressure the outside world puts on you, ultimately it's how you deal with it yourself, but also the pressure that you feel internally. And I think pressure from external in regards to people that aren't necessarily family, yourself, close people, friends, partners, whatever, that's something. But I think to an extent, me personally, I don't think you think about that. I think you think about the pressures of what you put on yourself, your family, your partner, your parents, and people that are sacrificed to give you what you wanted to do. I think that, for example, a mum and a dad's what you want to fulfill for them because of what they've done for you will outweigh any pressure. So Grealish, for example, that will outweigh the nation's, the whole of the City fan base, I think, to on him. But I think it's the exposure to it, and again, going back to it, what your characteristical traits. And I don't think maybe in the game enough we focus on that side of it. How that sort of mental side and the characteristical traits of building that resilience and building that character as a person. I know there's something come out the other day about, I think, Guardiola and Arteta. of course, them two are doing more and more around their players as people. And I think Arteta he's really trying to encourage his players to like settle down with families and things like that, so they have a settled lifestyle and understand very quickly what's valued and the importance. You know, I think those life lessons go a really long way in your career and ultimately beyond that as well.
Yeah. And you've mentioned a couple of times your dad there, like when you were a young player yourself and at that age where you were, you know, starting to have some of these emotions and playing regular team football, did you have any other mentors or coaches that were specifically helped or supported you outside just your own family?
Yeah. So obviously, like my dad's, and to be fair, like he'd probably get emotional if he ever heard me say it, but like my dad is the biggest influence on my career, my life, everything. I said to him, like, I owe everything to my dad. Obviously, my parents split up from a young age. I didn't really see my mum for a little bit. I've obviously built bridges with my mum now. We have a really good relationship. But like my dad obviously took that mantle on, and you know he sacrificed so much in his own life to be able to take me and to try and facilitate what was his son's dream. But then obviously that then in itself led to obviously external people. So a massive almost shout out to a guy called Mick Critchell who from, again, a really young age up until even now, the only reason why now it stopped is because obviously he's a bit older and you know he's restricted in what he can do. But he's been a massive influence for me, along with several other pros that have gone and played. So he's been a massive influence in the sense of like a lot of, I say, my upbringing in football weren't the English way. It was very continental. We're talking Spain, like Sweden, Norwegian and stuff like that, because he was very much a believer of that sort of pathway. So a lot of like, I never used to go out and practice passing and tackling and dribbling. I never used to do that. But I used to go out, and when I used to do sessions with him, which would be, regular once, twice a week on top of my own training, then, it would be all around the movement, the coordination, the vision, the awareness, the brain. Everything was about the brain. So I always said to our boys, like, what do we play football with? People go, oh, like, our feet and I'm like, no, you play it in your head. Like the best players in the world play it in the head. So like that was something from an early age I was very much brought into, and but the knowledge and the detail and the facts that come with it is what made me buy into it. And then I guess my own progression and the way I saw things was very different to other people, which over time you started to see the benefits of that. So he was a massive influence on how I see the game, the way I think about the game, my beliefs in movement, my beliefs in the vision, the awareness. And then ultimately, like I never, at the back of my house growing up, I got like a massive field and a park. And I say it to the boys all the time, like I used to just go in the back field, just kicking the ball around on my own. There used to be a massive load of trees. I'd just stand there, like try and ding a ball like 30, 40 yards and hit a tree, run after it, do it back the other way. And I spend like hours doing it. And then like there was a swing. So I'd be one side, my mate would be the other side. And basically used to do crossbar challenge with a swing set. But what I didn't realize at the time, I realize now, is actually that was me trying over and over again to hit a target with the right weight, the right trajectory. Do you know what I mean? So that was almost actually, and I'd say my range of passes is probably my best attribute. And as a byproduct, it was just the amount of time I spent with myself or my friends, not even trying to train, but just having fun. But almost now you look at it, go, actually, that was the main purpose, tied in with obviously the I would say the advanced stuff that I was fortunate to be exposed to, which I don't think is exposed to enough. No disrespect to coaches out there, but I see like a lot of when people go do extra training, it's a lot of cones and mannequins and hurdles and ladders, and it's all, you take away the stimulus straight away. And football is all about the stimulus, the ball, the teammates, the opposition, yourself. Like you always, it's a stimulus game. So. And it's a game that's in movement is represented from like frontal, sagittal, transverse movements, but we tend to just do, still saying like monkey see, monkey do. I see someone do it, that looks good, so I'll do it. And I think a lot of what you get now is parents love structure rather than chaos. And actually it's an invasion game, it's a chaos game. So actually I think that's something that as a country, more and more we need to be more open to and trying to build in. And that even going down to grassroots and, one-to-one coaching with social media, now you see loads of them, they get the lad, it's through the cones, turn, run. And it's like, but I'm telling you what to do all the time. There's no decision making. And then that's great. It just depends on the purpose for it, I suppose.
But you're right, because when you're on the pitch, as if our players on the pitch, I mean, we're joking obviously earlier on, I'm saying, and I refer back to Celtic being the first team to win that treble, but Jock Stein, who was the manager then, he used to say when they cross that white line, they're on their own. There's
Yeah.
nothing I can do then. They're on the pitch. And I think that's a key thing on what you're saying. But also, one of the things that was paramount to him, and I remember speaking to John Terry about it, and he was talking about when Mourinho came in at Chelsea.
Yeah.
And he said every training exercise they did from when Mourinho went in, they did with a ball.
Yeah.
And I think that's huge. You know, there was a really dark period for Scotland, without being disrespectful to the coaches that were involved at that time, because in their own way, I suppose they'd be deemed successful. But what happened was that a couple of the guys had been ex-school teachers. They were very systematic in the way that they set out the training.
Yeah.
And they actually took a lot of the natural edge away from, you know, that Scotland had produced a lot of good players prior to that. And they made the players almost robotic. And then it took a long time to unravel what that mess, you know.
Yeah.
And I think now when you see the way Steve Clarke coaches and you see the way the players like McGinn, players that will go and express themselves, and even, you know, players for deeper positions like Tierney, they're allowed to go and express themselves. And I think that's when you've got a good mentor. They encourage you to do the best of what you're good at, you know. And at that, what age would that be, Nine, when that sort of chip was starting to influence your...
So it was kind of, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's embedded quite early. I think, like you said, going back to the point there about, it comes down to trust, I think. Like, it's about building that relationship and that trust between a manager and a player, or a coach and a player. Because ultimately, if as a player I don't feel free, I don't feel backed, I'm never going to be, unless I am really, really having myself and really confident of myself that I just don't care. It will hold you back, because you got your own mind and you got your own thought processes that will prevent that. So, you know, and fear is probably the biggest word. So I think it is so important, and it's something as a coach that obviously I have to learn, because you want certain things done a certain way and a certain style. But I think it's about giving the players a thought process, giving them a plan. But at the same time, football's so adaptable nowadays. You can't just be regimented in what you're doing. It will change. And like I've done it this year. We prepared for games. Like, I remember we played Ipswich in the FA Youth Cup last year. And all year they played 3-5-2, 3-5-2. So whenever we come up against 3-5-2, we play 3-5-2. The first time, the whole season, I knew that because I knew the goalkeeper coach, who was a good friend of mine. They played 4-3-3. And we was like, oh, okay. So we had to adapt in the game. And it's about, and what you need is, I don't need players 10 minutes into a game looking at me going, what do we do? I need players that go, do you know what? All right, I figured this out already within a minute. I know what shape they're playing. That means they need this, because you're giving them the understanding. But then it's about them making their own decisions in and around the game. And I think it's definitely about giving them ideas. So even if you used to do like a passing practice, I think it's great to give them ideas and combinations and things like that, so they got it. But then at the end, you've got to go, cool, you now got 2 minutes. You play where you want, pass who you want, move where you want. You make the decisions, because you give the ownership to them. And as much, I think Guardiola said it, like, it's their team. It's their game. It's their team. We facilitate. We prepare them as best we can, but it's their game. It's what they're going to do on the pitch. You know, so I think going back to the mental stuff and the mind and the awareness and the vision, I think it can come in at sort of early ages. I think what you got to understand is kids are so receptive, like so receptive. The younger you are, the more receptive you are, because you don't have this idea of what life is and things like that. So you're so receptive, and the way the brain works, I couldn't tell you the specific details of it, but it's so receptive. So it's about putting just putting little droplets of that thought process in, and then it's about working it. But like you said earlier with Mourinho, it's about finding a ways to do it with the football. So, like, for example, I've done like little practices before. I've had boys dribbling the ball around, and all I'm asking them to do every time before they do an action, they must be telling me what they're doing. So you're going to do a step over. Before you do it, you must say it. And you have to talk continuously. So what I'm getting them is almost like, we call it like playing in the future. So I'm making them think about what they're doing, not just doing it for the sake of doing it. And you've got things where you might say, you know, when you receive a ball, I want you to shout the name of the colour T-shirt, the man to your left, or the colour of his boots. Now, it's not about checking shoulders. It's now about actually having a look, being aware of what's around you, but taking in the information. You see it all the time. People go and do like just basic things where you go and get a volley or a pass, and they go to find someone else. And people go, I check shoulders. You just see kids literally just like blindly, just really quickly snapshot. And you're like, oh, yeah, well done, brilliant. Well done, Billy, like whoever. And it's like, but hold on. Did you take anything? What information did you take in? Like the best players in the world can see everything and reduce that information to the key facts very, very quickly. So I think it's about adapting it to the age that you're doing so that the kids enjoy it. The first 10 minutes of any session is the crucial moment to gain their attention and their buy-in. So make it adaptable to that age. But I think you can instill it from a young age. And I think then obviously as they grow older, because you have the growth spurt period and things like that, where your coordination goes out and then you lack being able to move very well. Yeah. You lose the ability just because of the execution. So it's about then tying that in with the movement and the coordination. And then obviously as you get a little bit older, you now start to talk tactical and understanding and positional and things like that. But you want kids that are creative. You want kids that feel free. You want kids that feel like they can express themselves, that can problem solve, that got, they think 1 or 2 steps ahead. And then when it comes to the detail and the structure and the specifics as they get older and the tactical and the understanding, it's so much easier for people to understand.
I think that goes back to your initial point, though, that all of that is encompassed in trust. I think if the player trusts the coach, and the coach has the trust in the player, but the player knows that. I mean, I always say it. Obviously, as you're well aware, you've got my own son, but any of the young players that I'm helping a few young players at the minute. But one of the key things I always say to them if they're going in a trial situation is don't come off and regret not expressing what you do. If you don't do or try and show and express what you do well, you come off non-existent. You just, and if you're going to fail on your own terms. Go and give what you've got on offer. And if somebody doesn't buy into that, then you're at the wrong club. Whereas, I've listened to a lot of players and podcasts saying, I went there or my first season there, I tried to play it safe. I think very difficult in a trial situation. You're trying to show somebody what you could offer over a season in maybe 90 minutes or 45 minutes if you only have a game. But crucially, I think for a player to feel that they have the freedom to go and express themselves is a big, big part of the benefit of good coaching.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, again, it's the characteristical traits of what's the worst that can happen. I mean, the same.
Absolutely.
What's the worst that can happen? Like, they say no, okay. I'm in the same situation I'm in. Nothing, my life didn't get worse. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So, okay, now it's about finding the next opportunity and things like that. And I think what you get is you get one or two. You get one who tries to play so safe because he's scared of making a mistake.
Yep.
But then you get one who's trying to express himself so much because he's desperate to prove. Yeah. And neither of them work. Yeah. So when we have boys come in, I literally just say, look, just be yourself. I'll treat you the same as, and I think it comes important. If you segregate them, I think you make them feel like that. Yeah. If you make them feel a part of your group when they're not, I think it's so important. So I say to any boy that comes in with us, I'm just like, look, come in. I treat you like you're one of ours. Just be yourself. Yeah. Be yourself as a human. Yeah. Put yourself out there. Be yourself as a player. Because I think the higher you go, like if you go lower down, you go speak to, like, say, parents, just no real idea of football, and you go to watch a game and go, oh, that was really good. He was kicking the ball here and he was passing there and he tackled there. They talk about those moments. Yeah. You go higher, and you talk about the way they move, the off the ball movement, the decision making, the fact that you can see their head and you can see their look in the song. You can see that you go into more detail with it. Yeah. And I'll never forget, there was a lad who plays with your son now. We went and watched him at an exit trial. So he just got released from an EFL club. And he touched the ball 3 minutes in, I think, a 25-minute game, winger. And most people would have just looked at him and gone, nah. But there were moments in the stuff he done off the ball. There were moments in the way, just the little things. Like 2 out of the 3 times he got the ball, he had it, he sized someone up, and then just passed it safe. But But within that 2 moments, there was something you could see, we could see, or I could see in the way his thought process, or the way he moved his body, where you go, there's something there. Yeah. There's a level of understanding there. Yeah. Because like anyone can, like, no respect, like you go to a trial and everyone can pass the ball, everyone can do that. And then you get ones that proper stand out. Yeah. But it's the other side of the game that you really get in. And then ultimately that then tends to be a byproduct of like the ones who are technically better and this, that, and the other. So I think it's trying to find that right balance. If you're a coach, trying to make them feel comfortable and inclusive and feel a part of it and actually wanted. Yeah. And I think again, that comes back down to myself and the experience I've been in, to me wanting to be better, and I think also just being a good human, like completely away from football. I had 18 months where it literally turned my life upside down. My best friend committed suicide. Another close friend of mine passed away, which was quite a high profile one, which would have been in the news and stuff like that, because he had owned his own clothing brand and stuff like that. My granddad passed away, my uncle passed away, all within 18 months. I split up with my missus that I hadn't signed off. So it was such a whirlwind. And what I was fortunate enough at the time was I was involved in a community of people through something that I was invested in. And it exposed me to, I'm going to give a shout out, but a guy called Joseph McLennan III. Yeah. This guy was like Kevin Hart, Nicole Scherzinger, Forrest Whitaker. He's their life coach. I was involved in him. And this webinar that I'd done with him, it's just, everything was about rewiring the brain. Yeah. Everything was about rewiring the brain, how do you deal with things. He was saying about how do you manifest things into your life. And he got me doing some mad free song thing where I was like, I brought myself a trumpet and bounced around in my house and mad things like this. But to be fair, like, I can touch wood and say those things actually worked and helped. And what it done is it changed the way I view things. And even in those small moments, and over that horrible 18 months, I just like, I want to be a good person. Like, and to be fair, go back, like, I'm a lad, and when I was younger, I was doing like laddish things and things like that. I don't drink, don't do drugs, don't do any of that sort of stuff. But like laddish things when it comes to, and I got to, there was a point in my life where I just was like, I don't want to make people feel bad. Like, you know, and you're almost like you grew up. I grew up a little bit, to be fair. So I think in those bad moments, you start to find who you are. And like for me, unfortunately, I went through them at the age of like 26, 27. But now, you know, I focus on the good rather than the bad. So I talk about my best friend, and it's always about how fortunate I was and how blessed I was to have a sustained period, rather than how unlucky and how misfortunate I am to not have. Do you know what I mean? And it's the same with other things.
I think a lot of those experiences, especially when it is as grave as that, are the shapings of you. But again, you know, the support and help you'll be able to be to other players or other people in your life who are moving through it. I mean, I saw, you know, which is, I felt at the time it was the case, and I think it's a sad situation for anybody that's got addiction issues. But I saw Ivan Toney this morning saying that when it broke, that these gambling issues were there, and then not getting picked for the England squad, not being able to go to the World Cup. That
almost hit him hard.
It was more severe than actually getting the 8-month ban. The issue I've got with that is that obviously there are rules in place, and it's got to be punished because that's what the rules are there to do. But at the same time, that's been such an ongoing problem, along with maybe alcohol, I think, more than drugs, in sport and in football. And I think it's really important that people get supported through these issues. And I know that people can feel that's a kind of woke view, but it's not. It's a definite problem. And I think when you've got young players, especially nowadays, with access to that level of money and time to spend, to be online, you know, you're on. In my day, if you were going to bet, you'd go to bookies. One of my mates did it, was playing in Scotland, playing at a good level, and every free second he was going to spend his wages. It was actually in fruit machines. So I think it's changed an awful lot because it's more accessible, and bigger bets are far easier, and it's bigger lumps of money, and that, you know. But there's a lad who I think doesn't entirely comprehend still that why he missed out on that. You know, he didn't see what the fault of it was.
I think.
Sorry, just had to move there. We'll just pick up there. So I think it's crucial then that the right influences are on your life. At what age, Ryan, did you find when you were playing, you know, in youth level, when did you notice it significantly changed, like the standards were moved higher, or you know, the access you had to better coaches such as you had yourself now? Was there a period or a stage that you remember thinking, right, now we're moving up a level?
I mean, it's quite easy it's quite straightforward to go to essentially like almost revert back to the rapid rise of Bournemouth, because obviously that's where I was pretty much through that core period. So obviously there was that, but I think it was, and I had this conversation with a friend of mine now who I played with at the time. I look at what these boys get now. I look
Yeah.
at the attention, and I would probably say social media has been a big influence on change.
Yeah.
As much as I think it can be such a bad thing, social media, I think at the same time, if you use properly, it can be such a help.
Yeah.
But I think it's been as time's gone on, I think with the awareness and things like that, and sometimes as bad as it is, it's things have to go wrong before people do anything.
Yeah.
You know, and you had the Man City kid who took his own life, and from there, it almost like things escalated.
Yeah.
And I think, like, I look back to when I left Bournemouth at the time. We had obviously just got promoted to the Premier League, and I look back to then, and I look now as to what the players get given for them. At the time, I didn't get no help. With, and that's nothing against Bournemouth as a club whatsoever. It was still a relatively small club, punching well above its weight, and you know, it's managed to make its steps, and naturally, it's managed to find its way into, I suppose, being the level that it is.
Yeah.
And it's so hard for a business, because at the end of the day, it is a business, to be fast tracked in 2 years from League One bottom end to Premier League.
Yeah.
So things are going to take time.
Yeah.
So it's nothing against them, but you know what? I didn't get no help when I left. From them, I didn't, you know, no dossiers, nothing like that, no player care and things like that. I remember being released in like February, or being told my contract was going to get renewed in February, and thinking, that's it, I'm done, and I left. I had no idea that I could stay and train and utilize the facilities and do all of these things until obviously now. But I think we're in such a better place. So for me personally, I would say, obviously, that rapid rise coincided with Eddie Howe coming back. Which for me, I was so over the moon about, because when I was 15, I signed for him as I was 15. He signed me as a 15-year-old. He was the first team manager at the time, but he was the one who signed me and had a plan for me. Obviously went away, come back to the club in a completely different situation. And, you know, I was the only person at the time that was of my age that was in the first team fully fledged all the time, was involved, you know, so on and so on, because it's just starting like the 21s process and stuff like that. So there was that all going on. And he came back, I'll never forget it, I was due to sign a new deal, and he came back, like quite a long one, because originally when I got off my pro, I was only offered 3 months. And I think in the club's history, they only offered 2 people 3-month pros. I was one, and Danny Ings was the other. And the reason for that, I remember going in, and the reason for it was, I went in, like, oh, what's going on? My contract's up like 2 days' time. I'm like, what's the plan? They're like, what? Your contract's not up? And I was like, yeah, 3 months. They're like, nah, you signed a 3 month, but you were never just doing 3 months. I was like, well, explain it. And they was like, what have you done in 3 months? I went, well, first year pro, I'm like, been on the bench. And right, exactly, that's why you're looking for 3 months. So you knew you had 3 months to push as hard as you can to get yourself, because we knew you would be in a position where you've been around the first team doing 3 months at the age of 18. So I was like, okay, well, that's a bit of a backhanded reverse psychology way, but fair enough. Like, you know, it was like the carrot, as it were. So obviously, I already had my year anyway. And then I think it was just after Christmas, or it might have been just before, I was due to sign a new one, like 3.5 years. That would have seen me all the way through. And Eddie obviously came back. And I was buzzing. I was like, yes. Like, the guy who signed me, like, the plan for me, everything, amazing. But he came back in, I was in relegation zone. That year we got promoted to League One. But I come straight out of the first team and straight back with the 21s. And second half of the season was probably one of the worst seasons I had. Off of the best first half of the season I probably had. I just didn't know how to deal with failure. And probably at the time was a massive lack of communication. I was one of those, I was so scared to do something wrong. I was so scared to go and speak to him, because I was so scared of failing and not being a footballer. And it going against me, which actually probably was what hindered me as you go further down the line. But that conversation and that relationship, it was never built. And obviously, I'm lucky. When he left, I was 15. When he came back, I was 18, 19, and I was a different person. I didn't know how to approach. Like, because I was scared. I didn't want to go in his office. Like, do you know what I mean? Obviously, there was a couple of times we did, but I was like sat there like a school kid outside the head teacher's room. So I would say, like, around that period is when I started to get exposed to the more higher level, because he came back and he'd gone away to Burnley, and he I guess failed and this, that, and the other. And also naturally, with moving into the first team environment, you get exposed to not just the staff but the players. And we had some unbelievable players, like David James was there at the time. Obviously, he had World Cup, England, Liverpool, whatever. So we had some top players there, and essentially the boys that carried the team all the way to the Prem.
Yeah.
But then off the back of that, I would say I had the level of knowledge from like my dad. My dad was someone who he was very open to the knowledge that was passed on to him by the guy Mick, who coached me, sort of privately. Never had to pay a penny for that. Like he literally done it off his own back. Just wanted to help.
Really.
Like a real top bloke. Which then exposed me to a guy called Steve Guppy, who obviously you should know from obviously Celtics and things like that. So, and again, obviously, it almost like without realizing I was networking without doing it, and that just sort of was a byproduct of understanding more, knowing more, and then later on down the line, after I left Bournemouth and stuff like that, I met James Harper, and a guy who obviously played over 300 times in the Prem, played over so many games as a champ/Prem player his whole career. Still at the age of, he's got to be what? 40 something now. I spoke to him the other day for the first time in quite a while. Still trains every single day and is still playing football. Just like football's his, like it's like his drug. Like you can't get enough of it. So sacrifice family, everything. Like in terms of like didn't have a girlfriend, didn't have a child until really recent. Which massive shout out to him for that. But just at the age of 41, mate, just training every day, waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning, going and taking his bag of balls, training every single day, living the life of a pro. Which is what he done. Like, speak to anybody, they just said like his mentality and his mindset was just second to none. Anyone that come across him. And I remember I found out, so the longest you can leave a voice note for on WhatsApp is 30 minutes. And I found that out because we would literally voice note each other over and over again. Just talking football. And the more I spoke, the more I learned, the more knowledge I understand, the better I became just from that exposure. So I would say as I probably got older, the more I got exposed to it, but at the same time with the generational side, with what's being introduced now, the more obviously I've got exposed. So almost as like a natural progression as I've got older. It's been quite nice, but I'm quite fortunate. I think at the age of 29, compare myself to other people that I know, and even people that are older. There's people that are older than me that have had a much better career than I have. That are learning from me, that are probably more qualified than me. So I take qualification with a pinch of salt, but they're obviously needed and they're important. But I would say I've been quite fortunate that year on year with my life, it's exposed me, to more and more.
I think the communication is a crucial thing, obviously, as you pick up on, and through my own career and dealing with people, it's one of the biggest things we always worked on is good and bad, the communication's got to be there. I think when a player's being released, understanding why they're being released, and then trying to, especially when you're still young like you were then, and young enough where you've still got time. And obviously you mentioned, which was the most horrendous tale for me, was the young lad coming out of Manchester City. The suggestion was that Stoke were interested in taking him on. That boy's career wasn't going to end there. And you only have to look at the impact West Ham winning last week, and again, a success story of a player coming from conference football and going through to score the winning goal in a Champions in a European final. I think
that stuff obviously comes from the awareness of it now, though. I think like that was what I said to you, is accelerated by like Man City and other players. But I think that awareness has helped that. So weird enough, what we do at Aldershot, like I never had. There was just the things that are in place now just weren't there before, and it was almost one of them where. It's not like a woe me story type thing, but it was almost like if I maybe was in this generation now where I was exposed to the social media and like people like yourself and people that you look on a screen and you can be influenced by, good people. I think it makes a big difference. But then at the same time, it's like I wasn't, but now there are boys, and that comes with additional pressure, but that also comes with additional detriments. So I think it's trying to, for me, it's about doing the best I can for these boys in the position that I'm in now, to help them. So, I do think that obviously it's come a long way, and it still is going a long way. It's a long way to be finished.
But I think as well, you touched on earlier, Ryan, about man management, and I think that goes back to that where, the way that a team, or even obviously for yourself and Richard managing the Academy at Aldershot, there's so many young people there. And now, obviously, with the success of women's football and how that's the exposure that's bringing. So I know from working my own business with a lot of women over the years, you then have different emotional challenges working with women and men. And so trying to actually cater for an individual's reaction and how they'll react not just actually in moments of failure, but in moments of success as well. Do people rest in their laurels?
Yeah.
Do they have, that you say maybe you have a good first half to a season? Do you try and then protect that and not do anything wrong for them? Or do you push on? But again, I think goes back to your point right at the beginning, is the trust element there that you say, this guy saying, no, we believe we can get more out of you. We believe you can get more out yourself. And knowing that you're in an environment where that's being encouraged. And I think, when you get to the higher levels that you guys are dealing with, as the player that you were yourself, as well as the coach that you are now, the expectancy is like when you go on trial, all the players are good. You're not going to a situation where you're watching grassroots football and 2 out of 11 or 2 out of 7 or 1 out of 7 look like a strong enough player. When you're dealing with players where they're all higher, I think the pressures for some players where they've stood out, and I've seen it in young players, they've stood out when they were a big fish in a small pond, and as soon as they feel that advancement, and that adjustment has to be made. When you go as a small, you go then as a small fish in a bigger pond, when you expose yourself to academy football, then that adjustment, I think if the support can be there, then it encourages a young player to develop. When you look at like your scholarship contract when you were there, regardless of the period of time, even when you get into a pro and it's 3 months or 6 months or whatever they're giving it as a title, I feel personally when I look at young players who are in development contract situations, when I look back to my own young years doing an apprenticeship, that's what you're doing. You're an apprentice. You're there to learn your trade, and learning your trade from the coaches around you, getting exposure as you were fortunate enough to get and earned to be around the Bournemouth first team. I think you get the opportunity to see that's what it really looks like, because of social media, as you mentioned, and what you see in the press and what you see on Sky Sports News and things like that. Young players can see the celebrity status of being a professional footballer, but it's very easy to forget the sacrifices that you've mentioned. Training at 6 a.m, maybe missing out on family, not having kids to your old. And there are certain commitments that some people are not prepared to make those sacrifices.
Yeah, well, because you're talking about obviously with the kids and the sacrifices of obviously James Harper. He sacrificed, it's a funny story. He sacrificed relationships. So he had I was speaking to a lad called Ibrahim Sonko, who used to play for like Stoke and Reading. Yeah. He said him and Hearts lived in the same block. There was a massive field 11-a-side pitch. So he said he drove home. You see Harps on the field training. He's like, he's doing some finishing. Looked in goal. He stuck his missus in goal. Missus in goal. He's pinging shots out. Brilliant. Don't think she went back. I think that was it. I think that was the end of it. I mean, fair play to her for going in goal. But no, I agree. I think the problem is, and I have it on my social media in like the bio, I have like the caption of "you see what I want you to see," and I think that's what people need to realize. Like social media news, it's all fabricated to what people want to see. Even like documentaries, with obviously the lad that we've got and so on and so on. Like, there's always going to be a representation of something or someone based on the hidden agenda by the people above. You're not going to sell stories if you talk about how well someone is and how good successful someone is. You're going to sell stories by like Grealish at the moment. You're going to sell stories because he's out getting absolutely trolleyed, enjoying being a winner and fulfilling a dream. But there ain't anything wrong with that. There's a time to sacrifice, but there's a time at the end of that sacrifice, like he's done a massive slog of a season, World Cup mid-season, all of these things. I know that we've got England games now, but there's a small period window there where he needs to enjoy that. You don't sacrifice a lot, and you don't sacrifice all these things to then just be like a rock and not have any emotion towards it. So I think the problem that you get is again, I say, you see, people will see what they're led down the garden path to see. So it's so important. Like people see, all the things that these footballers have. And we always talk about the Prem and the best players in the world, but there's even like League One, League Two, National League. Absolutely. Like, there's players on like 3-4 grand that's still sacrificing and they're having to make a living and they're looking after families that you don't see. But it's like we focus on like, footballers earn so much money. No. The elite footballers earn a lot of money. Of course they do. But any elite sportsmen earn a lot of money. Football's just an industry where there's a lot of money and there's a lot of elite areas. But there's also a lot of footballers that are classed as professional footballers that earn £1,000 a week, £2,000 a week. And people, that's a lot of money. Yeah, it is. But at the same time, is there a businessman that earn more money than that?
Yeah.
There are people that will earn that money 2-3 grand a week, 4-5 grand a week every single year until they're 60.
That's right.
These footballers earn it till they're 32, and then it's about what they do. So I think it's a massive I don't know, cloud over football and things like that. But I think you need to look at football as a whole, not just not just the elite. Because it's like, I go look at the best lawyers, mate. They're multimillionaires. The best doctors.
I think as well, you know, the other point on that is that primarily because of the TV money that became involved.
That's why the money.
That's really true in English football.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily true in other European countries,
Yeah,
and it's
100%.
certainly not true in Scotland. I mean, you look at the situation where obviously there's been all the talk of Ange Postecoglou going to Tottenham and such a big jump and taking that job. But some of the figures I've heard is that he's going to be on somewhere in the region of 8 times his salary. Yeah. Now, how can you see anybody that's a lawyer or an accountant or any other profession?
You're not going to turn it down.
Don't move job to a better prospect for 8 times the money. It's insane. You know, it's unrealistic to think somebody wouldn't necessarily
100%.
take on that. And also, you've got the ambition. You know, I think the ambition is trying to actually keep the head on the goal, and the goal is to. And I think he's a specific example, Ange Postecoglou, that he wants to succeed as a manager at the highest level and prove that to himself. At 57 years of age, as you said, for a player, you know, there's so many young, successful managers now that there was Davy Moyes at West Ham. It was his biggest achievement. And it's in his 60s, you know. So I think any opportunity to go and succeed at the highest level, whether it's on the field or off field, then I totally appreciate why young players or coaches would take on that. And you've mentioned Eddie Howe at Bournemouth, and you look at now the job he's doing at Newcastle. You know, he's got the money to do it. He's a good coach.
I think again you've got to look so the job he's doing at Newcastle now. And I listened to an interview. I obviously speak to boys that play for him now, and that I knew from back then and stuff like that. A lot of what he is now is fun. The foundations were built, obviously, at Bournemouth originally, then Burnley's failure at Burnley, Bournemouth again. And then ultimately, again, a failure at Bournemouth because he got relegated. But was also when you talk about he was away from football for about a year. The guy grafted. He went to loads of different countries, loads of managers, went to Atletico Madrid, and so many different places, so many different countries to learn and to do it. But no, you don't know that. People just go, he's doing amazing now. But he sacrificed. He spent his own money. Yes, okay, he's got a lot of money, but he spent his own money. He had time. He spent a lot of time away from his family, where he was investing in when he got his next job. I'm gonna be successful. And the guy's gone from let's not beat around the bush. The guy was a League 2 manager when he first started. You know, one of the youngest managers, had to retire through injury. League 2 manager. Same with Jace. You know, Dan Hodges, the performance sports science guy, was with him at Bournemouth as well. Like all these people have gone with him. Perchie was a player. Like these were people in League 2 that have grounded and grafted, and he's now going to go into. He could be playing at the Bernabeu next year, with the Champions League. So as much as there was maybe through my experiences with him, there was maybe a lack of a relationship and a lack of a communication side, where Jace Tyndall was actually probably better with me. And I'll be honest, I was probably sour for a period of time where I said, you know what, really, really good coach, but bad management, mate, weren't great. That was just my experience and a couple of experiences. But there'll be other players that tell you he's great. So I think what you can never knock him for is the progress and the success that he's gone and achieved. And you don't, let's be honest, he's done that in 10 years. Like
no time.
That's nothing. People go, that's 10 years. That's a long time, yes, but that's nothing. You know, so
he's still a young coach now, but with a pedigree behind him because he's coached at that level and served his apprenticeship. You know, I think you look at the likes of Mourinho did the same, Brendan Rodgers did the same. That they've actually served their apprenticeship as young managers, and then came through. And although they're still young in years, they're actually very experienced coaches and managers. And I think that's. I mean, I've saw a few interviews with Eddie Howe recently. And you can see where he's adapted into the role at Newcastle, because it's a huge role. But I think fundamentally, he still views the game and the people that are around him in the same way, and he still goes about trying to get the
it would have been it would have been adapted, obviously, with things. But very much. He'll have his core beliefs, and it's difficult. It's the same at Bournemouth. You buy into it or you leave.
And so when you were coming through those stages, and even obviously as things maybe weren't working out the way that you would have hoped, was there points, Ryan, where you felt, you know, this is, it's too much emotionally, or is there points where you feel saying, do you know what, I've had enough?
Yeah, so obviously I kind of revert back to my dad, and it's like he was my biggest fan, but my biggest critic.
Yeah.
Like he was a hard taskmaster. But at the same time, like I feel like he had every right to do that. Like he, not through paying for people like coaching and stuff like that, but he spent his money on like petrol and sacrificed so much that, do you know what, I look at it now and go, do you know, you had the right and a platform to say, do you know what, I'm gonna be a taskmaster for. And some parents might turn around and be like, oh, he's hard. But at the same time, like, you got two options. You're a parent who's just like, oh, well done, son, unlucky. Yeah. And you just kind of go on. But I go back to what you get instilled in you as a kid. Or you got a parent like him who, he's got a kid. And he said, we speak about it now. Kid at the age of 6 says, Dad, I want to be a professional footballer. Kid at the age of 14 says, Dad, why is all my friends who aren't as good as me, why are they signing for pro clubs? And I'm not. Why? Yeah. Like, you're a kid there. So for him, he's going, do you know what? I'm going to do everything out of my power. The way I am, the way I speak to him, the way I take him everywhere, what I instill in him now to help make him successful. And I firmly believe that I firmly am in a position now at 29 where I go, did I have the career I wanted? No.
Yeah.
Did I have the career that I actually think, nothing against him, if Eddie Howe didn't come back to Bournemouth at that time, I generally believe I would have gone on and had a successful football career because of the people that were in charge of the club at the time and the relationship I had and the belief system that they had in me, hence the 3-month contract, which was an incentive to basically get your ass in the first team and play and things like that. So no, but I believe that those values that was instilled to me by my dad from the ages of 6 all the way through, and through hard times, 100% through hard times, and times where we argued and we fought and you know, other parents might go, oh, he's a bit out of order, like he's a bit, but like they don't know. You just see in a very clouded viewpoint. So I firmly believe I'm in a great position now where I can go on to be very successful as a coach and actually surpass the levels that I did as a player. So, you know, and even now, like he's like, my dad obviously struggles health-wise now. You know, he really struggles to see and things. Health-wise, he's okay, but he really struggles to see. The guy turns around and said, no matter what happens, like, I'm out here. We spoke about a game. He's like, you never know what can happen. I went to America to train and I got offered a deal when I was in America, and whatever happened with that. He turned around and said, if anything ever happens, because you just never know, he's like, you do not turn it down for me. And I'm like, even now in a position that he's in, older age, you know, eyesight's really bad. He'll sacrifice that to try and help me, you know, so.
At this age, obviously, as happens to all of us, you're able to reflect on the influence that your dad's been, or in some cases, parents have been overall, or other family members. Were you aware of it when you were younger, Ryan? Did it touch you in the same way? Did you know then that your dad was making sacrifices, or did you just feel like, well, this is the way my setup is?
No, I thought he was a bit of a dick.
It's a hard balance.
He knew what I had. And he knew where I could go with it, and he wouldn't let me not give myself the best possible chance.
Absolutely,
in the sense of like if I weren't on it like mentally in my mind and things like that, he would tell me straight. He wouldn't be like, "Oh, it's okay, son." He'd be like, "No, that weren't acceptable today." Yeah. And as a kid, I'm like, when I talk about a kid, I'm a teenager now, right? So I'm not just like 5 or whatever. Yeah. Like I'm a teenager. Like you know, I've probably got a bit of mouth on me myself, and you know, but. People might turn around and be like, oh, that's harsh. Like, you should be happy for your son. And I'm like, yeah, you should be. Yeah. But if your son comes to you and says, I want this is what I want more than anything else in the world, you do everything in your best power that you can to facilitate that. And what a lot of people tend to think is it's all about throwing money. Yeah. And that will only get you so far. Yeah. And that might get you in the door or whatever. But it's, I was saying earlier, the characteristics, the traits, those are the more important things. The things that cost nothing. Yeah. That build you to who you are, and we have it now. And there's even listen, I'm 29, man, and my dad still gives me shit now. He's still on my case now, and he says to me, he's like, he does it because he wants me to have like a burning desire to go, do you know what, like stuff you, I'm proving you wrong, and luckily the way I'm wired, that's the way I will do it. But that's also I'm wired like that because of him. You know, so. Did I realize he was making sacrifices when I was younger? No, probably not. Did I even think about it? Did I even care? No, probably not, because I was a kid, and for me, it was the norm. I said to him years ago, we had a big Barney or whatever. And I was just like, yeah, but every parent does it. And I'm like, I look back, I'm like, no, like, they don't.
It's been one of the most interesting things I've found. And one of the great things about doing these interviews, one of the things I want to try and share with young players coming through, to get to any level of success, doesn't matter whether it's in sport or in business or just in life in general, there are millions of different routes. There's millions of different ways that parents have influenced kids, for good and bad. And it's one of the things that I'm trying to explore, to show more that just because one parent does it one way and another parent does it another, there's no right or wrong. And I think, obviously, as a parent myself, I've got 3 kids that, in their own levels of success, I try and encourage them as much as possible and try and expose them to things. And I think you're right. What's got to happen is, if you've got a personal desire to be a success in a certain environment, be it in sport or otherwise, then the individual has to want to get, they have to want to be the success for themselves. They can't, you can't be that success for your child. But at the same time, I think if you can create an environment where your kids are exposed to things so they can learn from them in their own terms and benefit in their own merits, then for me, that's the way. But one of the things that I really want young players to benefit from watching some of these interviews, to think, God, well, I'm a bit like him and I do a bit like her, and they can see that actually these combinations of personality traits will still allow you to be a success. You don't have to stick to one specific set of rules or guidelines, and that will guarantee you success, because you've got to be able to do it on your own terms, you know. So and as that started to change for you, Ryan, and sort of you know, and obviously you still play today at a high standard, but at what point then did you start to see yourself with a greater desire to coach and to coach at a good level?
Oh God, I think it's just I'll be honest, I think it's a byproduct. Like, I had this conversation the other day with someone, and I almost felt like when I first come out of like pro football, full-time football, I almost felt like damn, like, what am I going to do? Because if anyone got released at 16, so they didn't get a scholar. All right, cool, go college, be a normal kid. And don't get released at 18, so they've done a scholar, didn't get a pro. All right, cool, go uni, go be a normal, like, do you know what I mean? Go to be a normal person. When I get released at like 21, I ain't going college. I ain't going uni. I'm like, what am I doing? And all I've known is football, and all I've ever cared about is football. Even in school, until I got to year 11, and again, this comes back to a bit of like fear, is like, I just didn't care. Like, I just wanted to play football all the time. Like, I had the best, I took German, right? Because basically I transferred schools. About 2 weeks into doing German, I cheated on my test. got a really good mark. Teacher was like, oh, he's so good. Like, he needs to take it as an option. I was like, yeah. Didn't want to tell my parents that I cheated. They're like, oh, that's great, take it. I was like, for 3 years, I was like, I ain't got a clue. So like, she like hated me, but like at the same time, like, I had probably my best relationship with her, because she also knew, like, it just weren't me. I couldn't be in a classroom. Like, I wanted to be out. And then ultimately, don't get me wrong, I matured a little bit in year 11, where I was a bit like, scholar decision year. Like, I just signed for Bournemouth. I'm like, one of the boys got released for misbehaving at school and things like that. And I was never the naughty kid, but I was like the cheeky kid and stuff like that. So I was like, well, I better knuckle down here and actually do my work and try and be a bit of a better student. So I think, like, it's so hard. Like, I just didn't know. I come out of it, I just didn't know what to do. Nothing. I didn't know anything about football. My dad obviously coached when he stopped playing. My dad obviously coached me and things like that. And I used to go with him. And so I think even that, again, like, we're talking like subconscious and things that I just implemented in your head. I just think for me, that also helped me then just be like, you know, I'm just going to go into coaching. And again, through networking and contacts, I was put in touch with someone that done his own coaching company. So I just started doing bits and pieces like that. And it almost became the secondary income to my football, which it still is now. Like, football's obviously my main source of income, and the coaching is still secondary. But it was like, okay, this just feels right, just natural. And you know what? I like kids. I get on well with kids, and so on and so on. And I just started to enjoy it a bit more. And then I got to a point where I done my badges and stuff, and I was put in touch by that guy, Ibrahim Sonko, with a guy who was setting up an independent football academy for 18 plus. 16 plus. So put me in touch, local to me. So I helped him set it up. And then I got to a point when I'd done that for 2 years, spent a year setting it up, and then a year actually of it running. And I was just like, really enjoyed it. But I was just like, if I want to progress now, I can't be here. Because no disrespect to them, like, it's an independent academy that the level of players isn't great. It's just there as almost like a secondary college program. I was like, same football, like, it's like I need to get out of the grassroots to get into the pro game. It's exactly the same way. So now obviously I've done Aldershot for a number of years, do the 21s, whatever. And for me, I will want to progress in a year's time naturally anyway. You know, so, and that next step is like Cat 2, Cat 1 academies. And then, you know, when I then retire from playing football, you know, probably in the next sort of 6 years or whatever, then I'll start looking at first team and things like that, because I can it will fit in with my schedule a bit more. So I think like, it was just something that was just, I just naturally fell into it. I was fortunate enough that I really enjoyed it. But at the same time, I do think, again, it was probably something that was instilled in me younger without realising, because it was all I knew in terms of playing. But I used to watch my dad coach, and and like most people have said to you, like, first like hero in your life is like your dad. Like, if you're a son, it's like your dad. That's the first person you look to, because it's a go-to. It's the same reason why we run a girls program, and I want female coaches, because it's someone they can look to and they can take inspiration from. So, you know, it's a bit of a cliche, but it's true. So I would say that's where I started that process, really.
And now, do you feel, obviously outlining your ambitions to be a coach and to go on and achieve as much as you can, and you know, the levels that you'll achieve in coaching that you wanted to achieve as a player, how do you feel? Do you feel like, you know, when it comes match day and things, how do you feel you're able to handle your own emotions? Because obviously you're not, if you're not on the pitch, whilst you're still playing, I mean, because you know the emotions of going and playing for yourself at the minute, but when you're coaching 16, 17, 19, 20-year-olds and you're trying to, you know, get the best out of them and see them get the best out of their playing years, how do you find that? Is that
it's tough? I find it, I'll be honest, I find it really hard. Not because I don't go to games and go, oh, this is really hard, like, I'm really struggling. Like, I don't, it's not like I don't feel like that. It's like, it's more of, because I still play. It's like, and I guess even for like top managers, when you, I mean, I still play, and when you first stop playing, it's difficult to trust people to do things that you know you can do, but they may be not able to do it right now. But then obviously, then the challenge is to make them better, to make them to be able to do it. So I'd say it's tough, because what I'm dealing with is boys that need to be told because of their age now, because they're so close to senior football and having a career in football. But they're also adults and they're men, and you know, so they need to be treated like that. But at the same time, they are still young and youthful in their experience. So I need to also allow them to make those mistakes. And don't get me wrong, there are times where I probably am on the sideline as a player and my head's on as a player and things like that, rather than a coach. And maybe the way I conduct and talk. But that's something I'm aware of, and that's something that I know and that needs to be better. So my self-awareness, I'd say, is quite good of that coach. There are times where I now will forcefully take myself out and sit down and just not say anything, because I go back to earlier, I can't play the game for them. You know, and it goes back to football, because where my knowledge of the game has improved so much from coaching and these conversations that I was speaking about earlier, I still will come across players now who are good players, but they just lack any understanding and any knowledge. And when I was younger, I used to do my head in. I used to get into them. I used to be like, how do you not get that? How do you not understand? I don't get it. Like, how? Because I used to be like, how can you not be on the level I am? And I know there's people not on the level that I'm not on their level. So, but then I got to a point where we're talking about going back to being a good person. And I was like, if you couldn't drive and we got in a car and I put you in front of a steering wheel and you crash your car, is it your fault? It's not your fault. I can't have a go at you. How can I have a go at you for something that's not your fault? You don't know. So I have two options: teach you to drive, or don't get in the car. So my point then is like, then it's about trying to educate and being almost like a senior pro. Like you say, like a senior pro's mentor and things like that. So like you got Martinez, who's a bit older, but he mentors Garnacho at United. And so, you know, it's about trying to help them. Now, if a younger lad or even an older lad wants to have it and chip on the shoulder and say, no, I'm not interested. All right, cool. Well, I'm going to tell you now, because you're not even willing. You're not receptive. So, you know, I think there's a thing like leadable, teachable, coachable. And if you're not any of those three, all right, cool. Like you'll end up where you'll end up, and it'll be your own fault. Like, it's your problem. I've tried, no problem. But so now you will deal with me just telling you straight. Whereas someone that just goes, actually, do you know, I want to learn, I want to listen, I want want to be better, and so on and so on. I give them then in 3 games time, now they get it. Now they know. So now I'm not having that problem anymore.
I totally agree. I think we actually ran my own business over the years, especially when we had bigger numbers of employees. We used to run a buddy program, and we would try and pair people who were similar to, these similar personality traits, and
you can see yourself in the kid.
Absolutely, and I've listened to a few interviews with Kieran Tierney. He talks about the influence Izagiri had on him when he was breaking through at Celtic, and he said, one of the biggest things, obviously, to get that support from a player whose position you're going to try and take.
It's tough.
It's phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And so, to wrap up now, as you obviously do coach many young players as we've gone through, but if you had anything that you could say to a young player, who's coming through, even sort of from grassroots, trying to break into an academy, is there anything for that particular player you would suggest at this time?
Yeah, I think part of this will probably be quite straightforward, like quite straight to the point. It'll be very much like, if you're serious, be serious.
Yeah.
If you want to say you want to be successful, you want to be a pro, but you're not willing to action it, don't waste your time.
Yeah.
Because you'll just become that person who blames everybody else, and you won't achieve it. If you are serious and you want to do it, then you need to explore and educate yourself on what it's going to take to do that. And ultimately, you need to put yourself in those positions where you need to make those sacrifices. You need to realize that, like if your mates go out, you're not missing anything.
Yeah.
What's more, you got to look at the bigger picture. What's more important in 5 years' time? Where do I want to be, as opposed to where do I want to be tomorrow? Yeah. What's more important to me in 5 years' time, as opposed to what's more important to me now, and things like that. I do think you find a balance. Graft, but at the same time, I said about Grealish earlier, graft, but at the same time, you need to have your own downtime, because that's important, it's valuable. But if you're serious and you want to do it, invest in it, graft in it. Don't think that it's going to just come, because it won't. There's a photo that goes around social media of the guy digging for diamonds, and he gets like centimeters away from it, gets sick. He's like, I can't see no results, turns around and goes. And there's a guy above him digging, who's just going to keep going, and we'll get the diamonds. So it's the same sort of thing. You can't train for a month or go to the gym for a month and think, I'm going to be a pro. Like, you've got it. It's the 1% every day, the 365% a year. So that at the end of the year, you're 365% better than you were at the start over the case of 10 years. Now we're talking like over 3,000%. So it's doing that extra 1% every day. And actually having a belief and a bit of faith in, you might not see where you're going, but whether you believe in God, whatever it is, the trajectory is on its way there. It's like, we've obviously boarded the plane out here at Gatwick. I can't see Marbella, right? Like, I can't see it Gatwick, but I have faith in the plane and in the journey that I'm going to be going on. That when I get there, I'm at the destination that I want to be at. And so it's very much like that. Like, so if you're serious about it and you want to do it, action it. Invest in yourself, not just ability, but your know-how, how you look after yourself, your understanding, invest in that mindset, be honest with yourself, make those sacrifices, but at the same time have a balance, but not a balance that is detrimental, and then have a real deep belief system that every day that goes by, I'm doing something that's making me 1% better every single day. And that 1% is making, over a course of 10 days, there's 10%. And it's those percentages add up, that in a year or 2 years' time, it will happen, it will click. Sure. It's not, you can't just be like, I'm going to be a model pro for 2 weeks. Nothing's happened. Oh, what's the point? You start giving up. Like, if you want it, you have to believe it. You have to go through the bad and the good, and I promise now there'll be more bad than good. There will be, but the good that you receive will always outweigh the bad. But you have to go through it. And again, like, you go back to Grealish. Grealish had to graft last year and sacrifice a real year of not playing many games and struggling for a year of breakthrough and unbelievable to be in the situation that he's in now. So it's so important that you have that bigger picture and that tunnel vision of where you want to get to. Because when you fail, like Sean said earlier, like, failure is the foundation for success. I don't know anybody that is successful, whether it's in business, career, job, money, whatever, that has never failed at anything. So whatever it takes. If you've got a PQ card, you've got to get quotes. Like Michael John's obviously a really good one, and things like that. Then you have to do it. And I employ people to use phones and technology for their better. So phones and social media has an algorithm where it puts in front of you what you look for. You go on the search engines on any one of those social medias, and it comes up with football, it comes up with quotes. It's because that's what it picks up, that's what you're interested in. And social media works in a way where the more time they need you to spend more and more time on it. So they will always put basically things that make you stay on it. So if you want to do that, then really be proactive in what you put in front of you. You know, if you're a young lad, don't put the night party lifestyle, the things like that as what you search for all the time, because that's what will always show you, and ultimately you will become that as a byproduct. You'll become a byproduct, 100%. And it's so important that actually you put in front of you the things that that are really gonna cement themselves in your mind, and that will live with you forever. And again, go back to what you said there about materialistic stuff. Like, take what you see in the media, take what you hear in the media with a pinch of salt, because it's all a fabrication of what they want to portray. And there's actually a lot of hard work, sacrifices, and good things that go into successful people that you don't see. So don't do it for the lifestyle. Do it for what the dream. Like, don't do it because you want a big house, you want a big car. Like, that's a byproduct, but at the end of the day, that's not going to make you feel better. Like, what will make you feel better is the fulfillment. Like, Grealish can live in the biggest house he wants with the amount of money he wants, but none of that will succumb the feeling he just had of winning the treble. It just won't.
You could see the emotion in Saturday night pouring out him,
100%.
And that's absolutely crucial. He's, especially as you say, since he went to City, and you take opportunities as they present themselves. Foden got the virus and he got in. And then De Bruyne gets injured in the final, and Foden gets injured.
It's like Kyle Walker, obviously, been battered by Pep this year because he can't play in the system. Got his head down, works. And obviously, I know really good people, like really good friends of mine who were close friends with Kyle anyway. And then you've got in the final, he didn't play. Semi-final, he played everything, played every game. So final, he didn't play. But Kyle Walker was one in the dressing room doing the team talk. But he didn't play. And that tells you everything you need to know about why he's successful and why he's got to where he's got to.
Brilliant. Ryan, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you taking out your holiday to spend a bit of time with us here in Marbella. Thanks for watching the latest episode of Making It Pro. Remember to like, subscribe and leave a comment below. Look forward to sharing the next episode soon.